Sunday, November 24th, Sony Pictures experienced an unprecedented hack that has whipped up a firestorm of controversy from Malibu to the State Department. And now, the entertainment company has canceled the release of a comedy centered on the assassination of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, called The Interview, after an attack threat by the hackers. Meanwhile, U.S. officials are claiming that the hack was entirely orchestrated by the North Korean government. So here to discuss the embarrassing emails and more about the hack, David Seaman from L.A. Thank you so much for coming on, David.
Hey, Abby, I feel like I was just here, but it's always great to come back on your show.
Thank you so much. You were indeed, but I wanted your input on this because I knew that you'd be great. So, of course, prominent members of Hollywood are embarrassed by the hack. It's absurd. I mean, the celebrity groveling, it's gross. And, of course, they're blaming the media for covering it. Aaron Sorkin penned an op-ed for the New York Times saying, as demented and criminal as it is, at least the hackers are doing it for a cause. The press is doing it for a nickel. David, if leaked government documents are fair game, then aren't leaked files of a publicly traded company?
You know, a lot of these leaks don't show Sony Pictures doing anything illegal, doesn't show any financial wrongdoing. It's pretty much just private communications. We've learned that some of these executives at Sony have an email ability that seems on par with like a 13-year-old. Pretty unprofessional email exchanges, but everybody has those. I doubt any of us could really hold up to some unknown party hacking into everything we've ever sent to every party ever. And I think the bigger, really troubling thing is, since when does a movie get, pulled from its release date because of a corporate email hack? That never happens, and it sets a really scary precedent, because now it's like, so Michael Moore, if he gets hacked when his next movie comes out, does that mean that it's going to be pulled from theaters or any other documentary or any sensitive comedy? It's a really weird precedent to be set here.
Right. Even Michael Moore tweeted earlier saying, we were threatened when we were going to release Fahrenheit 9/11. Of course, we would never have pulled the movie. It's completely insane. I'm sure there's a multitude of threats on a daily basis, but it's like, why act on this one and cancel a movie? The movie looked like crap anyway. I can't help but think this is like some big PR bonanza for Sony to try to deflect attention. What do you think of their whole response to this, David?
Well, if this is viral marketing to get people to go see that movie, I'd say some people belong in jail because they've crossed the threshold between savvy marketing and now kind of dealing with national security issues. And I don't think Americans should be afraid to go to the movie theater. Certainly if they were to offer some other way to get this movie, maybe download it and pay $5 for it, I think a lot of us would do that just to show that we're not afraid. And the way I see this whole bizarre thing is that there are really, if you apply Occam's razor, which is that the most logical explanation is probably the correct one here, there are two options. The first option is that the North Korean government really did hack into Sony Pictures as a way of intimidating them to prevent them from releasing this embarrassing film. That's option one. And option two is that this is some kind of false flag, psy-op to make Americans really, in favor of us going into North Korea and leveling the place. And I feel like that was the sense that most people had even before this. So if it was a psyop, it was successful. If it really was North Korea, they're in deep trouble. I do think there's going to be an American response. If you look at what Obama's been up to lately, the Cuba normalization of relations was a huge deal. And if you look at his rhetoric, he was saying these were things that were set into motion before we were born. And it's time to look at this in a more pragmatic way. I think in his time remaining before the Republicans come into power in January and make the last couple of years of his time in office really difficult potentially with investigations and stuff, I think Obama's trying to actually get some good things done. And the Cuba thing was a solidly good upgrade of U.S. foreign policy, in my opinion. And nobody around the world, even the Chinese, don't really care. Nobody wants to see the North Korean government continue to exist. The Chinese intelligence community just doesn't want to see all these refugees coming into China. If we can figure that aspect out, I don't think anyone's really opposed to doing something with this country that's been in a humanitarian crisis and has been, tremendously oppressive for the last 50, 60 years.
I would actually
Korea.
reject that and say I don't want any sort of military action. There's a lot of historical context with why North Korea is the way it is. It's the isolation. I mean, the DMZ. There's a lot to do with the Korean War that has facilitated all this stuff. I totally disagree with you that those are the only two options we're looking at here. Either a PSYOP inside job in terms of releasing this and trying to get some cybersecurity, or North Korea. I think the North Korea thing is totally fallacious, David. I mean, here we have this information coming from one anonymous government official, and then you have these stenographer journalists who just repeat them, and then you have the MSM repeating it as ad nauseum as if this is just fact now. I feel like there's what about like some disgruntled Sony employee?
I do agree with you that it would be nicer for the media. NBC News about an hour or two ago said that U.S. officials are saying that the North Korean hack was, in fact, coming from North Korea. The issue here, I'd much prefer, as you said, it was an anonymous government source. And we know that the government, they tell the truth when it's convenient, and when it's not convenient, they just make stuff up. That's what governments do. And it would be really a lot... It would give me more confidence if somebody who's actually an expert on internet technology, somebody like Alexis Ohanian or Kevin Rose, if one of those people looked at the data and said, yes, this is definitely North Korea, I'd feel a little bit differently from just that source saying that. But with that said, I think either way North Korea is screwed here. I really think that Kim Jong and his predecessor, these are despicable people. I mean, they are a disgrace to the species. They have concentration camps, they have work camps. There's no free will for people who are born there. You live and die under the yoke of the state. And, I talk about the risks of blind statism. North Korea is like a caricature of what can happen when you have blind faith in your government and when that cult of personality kicks up, not just for 4 or 8 years, but for whole generations.
Right. I guess I don't really want to jump on the bandwagon of making this about demonizing North Korea. Of course, we all know it's not a good country, but this is about why this is being deflected into this kind of demonization of North Korea. And also, like, the real crux of this here is why giant companies like Sony don't protect their information, their private information. David, we'll have to get all into that next time. Thank you so much for the lively discussion. Host of the David Seaman Hour, David Seaman, thanks so much.
Thank you. And again, the bird...
Thank you. Coming up, I'll speak with former economic hitman John Perkins about the shift in the U.S.'s policy toward Cuba. Stay tuned.
North Korea suffered a massive internet blackout on Monday, taking all state agencies and media offline for several hours. The US declined to say whether it's responsible in light of the row over the humiliating hack attack on Sony Pictures, which Washington blames on Pyongyang. It's another tantalizing twist for American media, which has slowly become obsessed with the small communist country. Marina Portnaya looks at the headlines.
North Korea making a new threat against the United States.
The North Korean military cyber soldiers.
In a few short years, a member of the so-called axis of evil has become the axis of mainstream media attention.
Last week, Rodman hanging out and partying with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
From basketball stars to a satirical Hollywood movie.
You want us to kill the leader of North Korea?
Yes. Over the past 3 years, the American public has been forced to become familiar with North Korea and its 31-year-old leader. Even when there's no news to report, some media outlets have proceeded to make up stories about America's adversary.
Dictator Kim Jong-un reportedly had an ex-girlfriend executed by firing squad.
Yeah, that turned out to be untrue. And then there was this.
A Chinese newspaper says the uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was eaten alive by a pack of ravenous dogs during his execution last year.
Kim's uncle was executed for stealing government funds, but no dogs were involved. The widely reported story came from a Chinese satirist who was poking fun at the notorious North Korean leader on social media. And then, of course, this month has seen a major spike in North Korea-related news.
U.S. officials say they have proof North Korea is behind that Sony hack attack.
Pyongyang denied involvement in what it called a righteous hack on Sony Pictures. The biggest corporate cyber attack in history ultimately caused Sony to cave in to cyber terrorists and not release The Interview, a satirical movie about a fictional plot to assassinate North Korea's leader. But have no fear, an adult film studio is keeping the spotlight on Kim, announcing plans to produce a pornographic parody of The Interview. Gamers, too, can get up close with Kim Jong-un. A video game is in the works that pits the North Korean leader against the so-called imperialist armies. $9,000 has been contributed so far to get the concept up and running. Meanwhile, the U.S. has vowed to hit back against the attack on Sony.
They caused a lot of damage, and we will respond. We will respond proportionally, and we'll respond in a place and time and manner that we choose.
As jokes and rumors about North Korea swirl through the media, it may be that the very real threat of U.S. retaliation is being kept out of sight and mind. Marina Portaya, RT.